of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Chistero. Chapter 24 of Predator and Prey, Part 4. What? Taking out the two thugs by the door had been easy. His body had moved in a blur of motion, the strobe light that he'd not been expecting, but he was too focused to let it bother him or steal his focus, and other multicolored flashing lights working to his advantage. Until he decided that throwing the 7-foot-tall gangly with 4 flailing tentacle arms bastard who tried to rope his legs out from under him onto the DJ set, the gasping sunglasses-wearing MC had yowled and waved his arms maniacally before the impact, was a logical way to bring the party to an end. There'd be no more celebrating the victimization of people these villains, because that's what they were, and no one would convince him otherwise, had forced into such a terrible situation, not on his watch. Die!
You motherfucker! That equipment was ridiculously expensive.
But it was an illogical purchase,
he replied, his body loose but ready as he stood near the doors and took in the now mostly quiet, aside from mutterings, curses, and worried whispers, amber-lit room. He could have been sick at what he saw.
Where the fuck is Mr. Compress? How the hell did you get in here?
Directly before him, an illuminated square dance floor yawning out between them, was an irate man in a flashy red suit. He was showing off his gaudy gemstone watch and the 4 gold chains which glimmered over his furred chest. 4 buttons on his black silk shirt were open to host them proudly as he growled. The guy was stood on a dais, like some kind of madman with a god complex, his shoulders shaking with rage and shock, whilst vermilion eyes narrowed at him from a darkly furred face. So this, he supposed, was Boss-sama. His angry wolf-quirk mutated body was looming up from the most ridiculously overstuffed couch he'd ever seen, a bushy brown tail slashing the air angrily behind him, whilst 2 women, who he didn't recognize, sat on the floor next to his shoeless, huge-clawed feet. They were handcuffed to the armrests and looked drugged out of their minds.
Where is Shinso Kimiko?
To his left, one of them checking on the bodyguard he'd punched in the throat. He was still breathing. There was no love lost there. Were 2 of the other hired men, their bodies dressed in poorly tailored suits and sunglasses. Indoors and at night? Really? They were stood at the ready, their scaly faces worried and bewildered. Behind them, similarly drugged, were 2 women and a man, all dressed in cheap, scantily kimono-like robes, and sat barely conscious on a few floor cushions, their bodies slumped against the walls.
Timmy, you have a lot of nerve coming here and demanding things.
To his right, 4 of the thugs were trying to wrangle the big flailing squid man out of the damaged sparking equipment. The huge speakers had toppled onto the lighting rig and the turntables had collapsed. Whilst next to his feet, the other man he'd down groaned unconsciously into the concrete floor, his tongue lolled out and chest heaving. You served him right. The rest of the room similarly hosted a few other people, all in their late teens, early 20s. None of them had reacted to the multicolored lights shutting off alongside the music, and none looked capable of getting themselves out of there safely by themselves either. Dotted around the square room, roughly the size of his cafe. There were no other visible points of entry that he could see besides the doors behind him. However, there were 2 bars and a range of seats. Some that housed owlish-looking patrons. Each man sat with a sex worker who was either frightened or too drugged to know what was happening.
I'm the man you wanted to have a chat with, aren't I?
He asked, his eyes carefully regarding the 7 men who could still choose to attack him whilst keeping his focus on the heavily furred, claw-handed boss.
So what do you want? Why go to all of this?
He pushed.
Anyone is welcome at my...
And there it is.
The tall, nearly 7 foot, he thought that finally reaching 6 feet around his 19th birthday had been an accomplishment since he'd been 5'6" for most of his teenagers. Pimp cum business owner sneered.
What gave you the right to flounce into my territory and start changing things?
He all but owled, those big ball-like hands curling into fists as he sneered.
I've lost 4 of my best girls to your stupid little contact scheme. And my customers, my clients, are getting too scared to come here.
If they're scared to visit this place, then they know what they're doing is illegal.
he stated bluntly, a glare narrowing at some of the jaunts who were now sweating bullets and looking as though they were trying to leave.
What gives you the right to capitalize on people who may have had no other options?
He countered, his hands gesturing around the room.
Why not use your wealth for something good?
He asked.
Why not give these people actual work to do?
He seethed.
How can you stand there and be okay with all of the harm you're inflicting?
I've not even begun to inflict harm yet, you bastard!
Boss Sama spat before, with a snap of his fingers, a person stood up from behind the bar. Kimiko was held against his wide, barely clothed lizard's chest. She was gagged, her hands clearly tied behind her back. She stared at him with frightened eyes, her hair disheveled and summer dress torn at the front, exposing her bra. The needle-toothed bastard who held her smiled at him, a long globular tongue whipping out to lick her cheek. He held a knife to her throat.
Now what do you have to say, tough guy?
You're not a murderer,
he replied shortly, his posture unchanged, his eyes looking back to the scowling pimp.
You're in enough trouble as it is,
he reasoned.
Let her go, make no further moves, and save yourself any extra jail time,
he stated, his brows furrowing when the other barked out a cruel laugh that was echoed by his fellows. However, unbeknownst to anyone other than him, he could feel Dobby's phone vibrating in his back pocket. The cavalry was on the way then. God, he hoped that he could get this mess resolved without too much outsider interference. For the sex worker's sake, damn it all, he could see several CCTV cameras dotted across the walls and ceiling, cameras that would no doubt hold incriminating evidence. But taking this wolf bastard down didn't look like an option now, did it? Not that he didn't want his tailed ass hauled off to jail, of course. However, the law had always been a black and white affair, and regardless of anything he could say or do, there would probably be consequences attached to this nightmare, wouldn't there? Fuck!
You're trying to get me out of trouble.
Boss Sama chuckled, a furred hand wiping at his tearing eyes.
What kind of saint are you?
I'm just a person who owns a cafe for the public interest,
He replied with a shrug.
Think about this logically.
He urged.
I'm not the only person you'll have to deal with.
Honey, Shinji, boys, fuck this bastard shit up. No.
Sighing, because of course, Shouta ignited his eyes and fell into one of his preferred kata. Slipping out of the bull-headed man's grabbing fingers, his associates squealing when whatever missile-based quirk he wanted to fire from his chest cannon refused to launch. It ducked low before springing to uppercut the man in his gray-furred cow's jaw. Not waiting to watch the bastard hit the floor, he could see in his periphery that the other henchmen were rushing in. He used the metal-skinned man's cannon to his advantage by latching onto it and using it to propel himself into the air. The force of his vault sent the cannon user tumbling to the ground. He then flipped to form a paired aerial kick which landed him onto two other men who tried to snag him, his feet planting in their chests so he could springboard off them. To plow a flying kick into another 7-foot goon's chest, and once his booted feet hit the concrete, he threw a number of short-range, powerful jabs into the last attacker's torso before throwing a solid right hook to plow across his astonished maroon-colored face. The brute gasped, spun to the floor, and stayed there to groan and shudder with his friends. When would people learn that strength would submit to skill almost every time? The
actual fuck!
The incensed wolf snarled, his head shaking in disbelief as clawed fingers ran down his irate face.
Who the fuck are you?
I'm just a cook by trade,
he returned calmly, his eyes slanting to the now blue lizard man holding a now more relieved-looking Kimiko and the quivering, definitely terrified patrons who were all stood, their gazes flicking from him to the exit he guarded.
I'm a childminder and self-defense instructor besides. He shrugged. I'm also someone who just wants to get my friend out of here safely.
He furthered, his glare now leveled at the pimp.
Give up now. Let her go and...
No!
The tailed man seethed.
No! You don't get to dictate to me! Not here! Not in my place of business!
He growled darkly.
No! You're going to put your hands up! Get over here! And don't try anything funny, or Sven will slit that little slut's throat, you crack!
Blinking, their heads looking up at the illuminated bars swaying on the ceiling, Shouta only had a second to blink and throw his arms across his eyes as the sheet metal ceiling gave way with a smash! Coughing at the dust that swirled around the spacious room, the sounds of terrified screams, yells, and squeals setting him on edge, the 21-year-old felt himself balk and incredulous laughing, leaving him as All Might stood in tailored black pants and a pristine white shirt. God, had he come from his charity event? On the color-changing dance floor.
You there!
The blonde snapped, his right index finger pointing at the now purple, shaking lizard man.
Release that young woman this instant! Don't do it!
Boss Sama yelped.
She's our only leverage! Woo!
Everything then happened in a blur. Wah! 1 second, everyone had been fixed in place. The next, yo! Boss Sama was sprawled across the floor, the lizard fiend, and all the hired goons piled atop him. Oof! The Johns were similarly sprinkled over the overstuffed couch upon the dais, their ties and belts used to restrain them.
Now, take it easy.
Whilst the drugged, whimpering, clearly abused sex workers had been carefully, somehow gently, placed on a platform made up of cushions, and Kimiko, now free of her gag, her wrists no longer tethered, was stood beside him, her tearful form collapsing into his arms as he held her face pressed into his neck as he rubbed her back. Oh, shades!
Shouta-kun?
Looking up, his face definitely bewildered, the cafe owner smiled at the towering symbol of peace, a chuckle leaving him.
That was quite an entrance. He grinned. How in the world did you know I was here? I mean, thank you, but aren't you supposed to be schmoozing snobs right now?
Watching as the bronzed pro chuckled, the man then snapped off a salute.
Your friend's non-clouded peasant Mike filled me in after Midoriya Shonen called me.
He replied with his usual fervor.
However, looking at how well you've handled the situation, my young friend, I can hardly believe that you're not counted amongst our number.
He laughed before, his laughter a bit strained.
I'm very pleased to say that you're unharmed.
Shrugging lightly, whilst the woman he'd come to help carefully pulled away, he swiftly removed his apron and handed it to her, those shaking, grateful hands taking it and slipping it on to hide her exposed flesh.
Well, that's mainly thanks to you.
He replied warmly.
Thank you for coming.
He added, before his brows lifting a fraction.
I had to let the villain who tried to abduct me go.
He stated, the other's face becoming serious again.
His name is Mr. Compress. Have you heard of him? Ah, that villainous friend!
All Might breathed, his neon blue eyes widening.
And you're right. He's not hurt you, has he? I'm fine. Thanks to the kids.
He offered quickly before pointing to the left.
I shoved it that way. He could still be around.
He furthered.
He is terrible, my friend.
The powerhouse boomed.
I will apprehend that villainous knave and bring him to justice.
He assured before, a little quieter.
The police have just arrived, so I will see you at the police station later, alright?
Shit!
Sure.
He nodded.
Good luck. And he's gone.
He deadpanned as the legendary hero literally bounced back through the hole he'd made in the roofing. Shouta, Kimiko breathed, her frightened face looking to him. Police! Put your hands up now! Grunting, the pair of them doing as they were told, the eatery owner sighed. On your knees! Now! This was going to be a long night, wasn't it? Wiping at his nose. His gloves were ruined. No amount of dry cleaning would remove the mess, he was sure. Atsuhiro sighed as he limp-stumbled through the old industrial estate, the sound of sirens getting louder, spurring him on. He should have gotten further away by now, however he kept looking behind him at the hidden brothel, his lips pouting with a worry he shouldn't feel for the adorable, talented, intriguing man who'd claimed to be so ordinary, the assessment of himself honestly made, when he was anything but. He probably wouldn't have been much help with his arms so bruised, though, would he? Why did he want to help him anyway? He shouldn't, should he? The long-haired, roguish, handsome bastard had outsmarted, out-outwitted him. Him! The Mr. Compress, gentleman villain. Well, almost villain, he supposed. He wasn't exactly well known. There wasn't a bounty on his head, and if it weren't for his dead father's reputation, God rest his crooked, clever soul, then he'd probably not have got his foot in the door and attained any clients to fund his lavish lifestyle anyway. A lavish lifestyle that, now that he thought about it, was quite lonely. A lavish lifestyle he didn't share with anyone. Hell, no one would have cared about him the way those children had cared about Aizawa-san. Or the way Aizawa-san had cared about that prostitute. Really? Fucking really? He wasn't even sleeping with his unarmed form. Oh, and what a form it was! He'd spotted a tapered waist and well-defined physique lurking under those baggy black clothes, rushing into a potentially dangerous situation alone and unarmed. A form that wouldn't feature the cute, properly tailor-made outfit he'd been imagining either. Well, not in the first instance, anyway.
Master Compress!
Balking! A shudder running through him. The brunette snapped his head to a rooftop, only a handful of yards behind him, his eyes narrowing to mortified pinpricks. No, it couldn't be.
Stay where you are!
All Might! Fucking All Might knew who he was! How? Yipping, he quickly stumbled into the alleyway to his left, his power activated to shrink his distressed body down and into a marble directly above a gridded drain. His consciousness, which he managed to retain where his victims did not, aware of his sphere dropping with a clink into a pipe system he could roll down. Oh, thank God,
You'll not escape that way!
Feeling his panic spike, he felt like a hamster in a wheel as above him the asphalt was being torn away into massive blue cracking hands, which were desperately trying to snatch at him. Oh no, he couldn't go to prison! He wasn't cut out for that lifestyle!
God damn it!
At the sound of the bonds cursing, Atsuhiro realized his panic about being caught traded for panic about ending up at a space his human form wouldn't be able to manifest in, that he was falling down another pipe, the glassed surface of his quirk form pinging, clinking, and clanging against the metal before with a splash. He ended up in a, disgusting sewer line. Groaning and more than a little motion sick, the rancid smell all around him not helping matters. The brunette transformed with a retching cough, his body crouched in a mess. But at least he was free. God, when he got home, when he got in the shower, and slept this awful evening off, then he'd be sure to head back to the Noroneko on Monday. After such a harrowing escape, he needed a delicious slice of cake and a decent cup of coffee before he started re-evaluating his life choices. If a man like Aizawa-san could be happy living such an extraordinarily ordinary life, well, maybe, just maybe he could too. It certainly beat having to live a life constantly looking over his shoulder for All Might, didn't it?